In today's video, I wanted to continue with and finish up my journey through the main story featured in Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Last time, Talion had gone and executed 4 of the 5 Warchiefs. Each Uruk leader was drawn out via a showdown mission. I had to learn their strengths and weaknesses, deal with their bodyguards, and adapt to their unique fighting styles. After that was said and done, Hirgon and the Outcasts launched an attack on one of their strongholds. Using a cart full of explosives, Talion helped to push it into a monument of Sauron. This was enough chaos to draw out the first Black Captain, the Hammer. For a little bit, Talion and the Hammer went toe-to-toe. However, the Gravewalker was the one to come out on top. After the Hammer's execution, a woman by the name of Lithariel arrived at the scene. She wasn't looking for Talion, she was instead searching for Celebrimbor. So, together, her and Talion left Udun for another region of Mordor, Nurn. There, Talion met with the Queen of the Shore, Lady Marwen. Something seemed off with her though. She appeared sickly and looked quite frail. However, she had information that could help Celebrimbor and Talion on their journey. Her intel led the duo to a ghoul-infested cave. Within, they managed to find more heirlooms belonging to Celebrimbor. Furthermore, they were saved by a dwarf named Torvin. This opened up several questing pathways. Torvin's quests were all about hunting and taming the beasts of Mordor. The first lesson was about mounting Caragors, and the second was about mounting Graugs. Then, the other pathway belonged to Lady Marwen. After completing her questline, it's revealed that she was poisoned and possessed by Saruman the White. Severing the connection brought her back to health. As for her quests, they involved branding the Uruks. This turned them from foe to friend. Using this ability, I was able to brainwash a captain, turn him into a Warchief's bodyguard, and then have him take the place of said Warchief. As it stands, one of my next objectives is to brand all 5 of Nurn's Warchiefs. This is where the story continues. From here, there are several missions to embark on. One of them belongs to Torvin, another to Lithariel, and the last few to the Warchiefs. I knew that branding all 5 of the Warchiefs wouldn't be an easy feat. Shadow of Mordor walked me through the first one, but surely the training wheels would come off for the remaining 4. Gathering some intel at one of the nearby towers, I was able to reveal the identity of the next boss, Darg the Bloody. I'll be getting into it when it's time, but there are a couple of ways to go about branding the Warchiefs. As it would turn out, brainwashing a captain and raising him through the ranks would be the steady but slow way of doing it. There were more direct methods. In any case, I decided to mark Lithariel's quest as my next mission. From context clues, it sounds like Torvin's quest will be his last, so I figured I'd savor the moment with him. However, I wasn't quite sure where Lithariel's questline was going, and I was eager to find out.
I don't care of the risks. It's for the well-being of the Queen.
Milady, this does not feel
Attacking
safe.
the camp would be ill-advised.
He's on our side. I have no choice, Talion. I need my mother's elixir.
Even the stranger says this is a fool's errand.
I know who she reminds you of, Talion. She is of this world. You are not.
Enough! We attack as planned.
I will take care of the orcs.
We could follow behind unseen.
We get the medicine, and we leave.
The White Wizard has taken his toll on the Queen. Only in stealth can we clear a path so Lithariel and her men may find the elixir.
Emotion fogs your way. Risk without reward is recklessness.
This medicine will clear the Queen's mind and lead to answers of your past.
Then may truth justify our alliance with these people.
As hinted at by Celebrimbor, it sounds as though Talion has feelings for Lithariel. Apparently, she reminds him of Yorith. If you're like me, you might be thinking, didn't you just witness your wife and son get murdered not days ago? It's a pretty good point, but something the game doesn't really tell you is exactly how much time has passed since the attack on Blackgate. It seems as though Talion's adventures have come one after the other. However, according to several online forums, it's believed that weeks, if not months, have gone by since Blackgate. It's not confirmed, but development in Udun points to this theory being plausible. Let's just say there was a slight delay while Celebrimbor and Talion fused together. In saying that, it's not meant to explain Talion's feelings and rationale, but maybe that might help shed some light on his personal timeline. Alright, now on to the mission at hand. Honestly, it was designed similarly to the beginning portion of the Dark Monument. There were 3 questing areas that held over half a dozen enemies each. The goal was to wipe out the orcs in those regions without raising the alarms. As I mentioned earlier in the game, I now had a new technique that I wanted to try out. While I didn't have a Caragor, I could still pop some heads and keep maximum focus. All I had to do was stay out of sight and maintain my elf shot. For the most part, that was doable for the first 2 zones. I only needed to eliminate foot soldiers and archers. However, for the third and final area, the game decided to spice things up and throw in a captain. Fortunately, Luga the Tracker didn't have very many strengths. Furthermore, I could easily dispose of his nearby companions. This pretty much just made him a glorified Uruk, which I suppose is all captains are. Interestingly, throughout this whole mission, Talion has been complimenting and praising Lithariel. She does deserve the recognition, but after a while, even Celebrimbor starts to roll his eyes at him.
Did you find what you needed?
Yes. Take this to the Queen immediately.
I doubt any medicine of men will cure her queen.
Let's hope that it heals your mother.
We found this message. Orc leaders plan a gathering by the fishing village. We can prepare an ambush. I owe you a great thanks.
I'm glad to be of assistance.
We are lucky to have you.
These are not your people, Talion. Remember your wife and son.
Well, I mustn't keep you.
Yes. Every moment is precious.
Celebrimbor does have a point. Talion is only back in Arda because of his connection to the Wraith. A life with Lithariel and the tribesmen would be complicated to say the least. Plus, he still has to exact vengeance on the other black captains, and who knows what kind of havoc they'll wreak before everything is said and done. With the completion of the quest, The Cure, another one of Lithariel's missions becomes active. However, to not only calm Talion down, but to evenly spread his attention, I set my sights on Torvin's quest next. It was finally time to take on the White Graug. This is the beast that killed Torvin's hunting partner, or, as we've been able to piece together, his brother. It's also the guardian of Celebrimbor's chisel, another heirloom which will reveal more of his past.
Torvin!
Heads up, Captain! Time to go hunting!
Of course, Torvin's already halfway through the door. I suppose, though, he has been waiting for this moment for quite some time. Downing and mounting the Caragor, the dwarf and I make our way to the Graug's den. Along the way, Torvin talks his usual game. He says that hunting this Graug is going to be all about art and finesse. If I'm not careful, I'll die within seconds. I should listen to Torvin and behave like Torvin. He then tells one of his many long tales. I haven't quite gone into detail about Torvin's stories, but let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if they were fabricated. Made-up experiences within a made-up experience. However, as Torvin and I near the Graug's den, he does talk a little bit about his old hunting partner again. Apparently, their last encounter with the beast was over 10 years ago. Ever since his brother's death, he's been tracking the beast down. While he's been wanting to challenge the Graug, he knows that facing it alone would be a death sentence. So, really, that's why he's been working with Talion. However, Torvin had already disclosed this at their first meeting.
Whoa!
The Caragors are too quiet. I don't think the Graug is home.
Then we go in and we wait.
Ambush? How military. I like it.
It's an axe.
It's just as sharp as the day our father made it.
Sun Ishi Krim Patrul.
Aye, that's right. Remember me? Come on, Captain, what are you waiting for? Direct order!
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. For starters, in Celebrimbor's vision, it showed that he had fallen under the influence of the One Ring. Sauron was able to control Celebrimbor and had him tamper with the ring. While we don't know what was achieved, one can only assume that it made this dark artifact even more powerful. Moving along, within the cave, Torvin had found a dwarven axe and 100% confirmed that it belonged to his brother. Of course, we didn't need this confirmation, but if there was any doubt, it can now be put to rest. Then lastly, it's showdown time with the White Graug, and Torvin can't even be a part of it. The dwarf is out cold, so it's up to Talion to save them both here. The Graug fight is quite interesting. Its mechanics are relatively simple. The Graug gets angry and it charges at Talion. I shoot its head with an arrow, it runs into a wall, and I inflict damage. Really, the kicker was what happened in between each attack. Ghouls would spawn in and take aim at the Graug. This seemed nice and dandy, only they didn't actually inflict any damage. Instead, the Graug would grab the ghouls and feast on their bodies. This worked towards replenishing its health. The only things I could do here were either shoot the ghouls out of its hand, or count my losses and slay as many of the ground ghouls as possible. Honestly, I tried the former, but I found the maintenance to be too much. Without focus, I found it too tricky to time the shots, and of course, I needed to replenish my arrows after a few attempts. So, eventually it got to the point where I just let the Graug snack on a couple of the ghouls. While it was busy chowing down, I hacked and slashed away at the stragglers, cutting off its health supply. Before long, I was charging in for the final attack on the White Graug.
I think he's dead.
Well, that's what I call beast hunting, eh?
Indeed, indeed.
Next time I'm not gonna let you have all the fun.
Oh, no. This is the last time. I have other prey to pursue.
Well, you need help on your journey, so what do you say? We put some
No,
shadows...
Torvin. I have to do this on my own.
If you survive, come to the Blue Mountains, eh? I've lots of friends that will drink until their kegs run dry.
I've seen how much a dwarf can drink. I do hope our paths cross again.
Right. Now how do I get you out of here?
I hope that Torvin finds his way home, now that his hunt is over.
If he does, then he will find his home is not as he left it.
Well, Torvin's brother, whose name is Gorvin, by the way, how very Tolkien, has been avenged. With that too, Torvin's questline comes to an end. His journey in Mordor, his purpose, is complete. He's left a lasting impression on Talion, and I'd like to think vice versa. Because of him, the Ranger now knows how to hunt and tame the beasts of Mordor. He's also gained the ability to think like Torvin. A little bit of chaos, a little bit of impulse, but a lot of heart. And hopefully for Torvin, he now knows a bit more peace. Although I kind of doubt it. With the War of the Ring building up, just about everyone in Middle-earth will get pulled into it, whether they like it or not. Before heading off and hunting down the Warchiefs, there's just one more mission that's tied to Lithariel. I've kept Talion at bay for as long as I could, but I guess death and resurrection does something to a man. The start of this quest brings me over to one of the strongholds in Nurn. The mission itself is called The Rescue, and unfortunately for Lithariel, it appears as though she's gotten herself into some hot water.
Such a shame. If you truly know nothing, then you're of no use to me. When you're done with her, hang her high. Make sure the Grave Walker can find her.
You aren't going anywhere, Slack. Tell us where he's hiding and we'll kill you quick. Now we kill you slowly, just how I like it.
While I'm unsure if Talion's aware of it, we the viewers get to see that the tower is in town. It appears that my reputation continues to precede me, as the Black Captains are out asking questions again. Before I get ahead of myself though, we'll see if this leads anywhere beyond a rescue. As for the task at hand, this quest is broken down into multiple phases. The first is to brand 6 Uruks without raising the alarm. This has to be done in under 8 minutes. I'd say that it had its moments of being both easy and difficult. There are so many orcs around that branding 6 is no trouble at all. Supply is not the issue. Really, the kicker is staying undetected. You never know when an Uruk might turn the corner or turn around. Also, targeting a pack of them wasn't worth it either. Because of that, I found it easiest to just stick to the basics, focus my efforts on archers, and only go after secluded Uruks. By doing that, I had my 6 allies in no time.
Maybe if we make her bleed a little, she'll start talking. Down on her knees.
Here comes phase 2 of the quest. I can either kill or brand Lithariel's captors. There are 5 Uruks surrounding her, and because of that, stealth isn't the easiest option. However, there is a little exploit that I've yet to explore. Essentially, by being within eyeshot of an orc, I can press the Y button and call them over. This raises their suspicion enough to where they slowly approach Talion. By hiding behind a wall or object, I just have to wait for them to get close enough. As soon as they're within arm's reach, I can stealth brand them and turn them into followers. This worked for all 5 orcs. It's certainly a handy feature and a fun way to cheese the system, but it won't always go off without a hitch. That's something that I learned the hard way later on. Once the orcs are docile, Talion can head over to Lithariel and pick her up. This brings on phase 3. Together, they slowly hobble their way out of the stronghold, but of course, a simple exit is not in the cards. At certain milestones, packs of Uruks will come rushing in. The first time this happens, those 6 branded Uruks from earlier come to my rescue. Along with the newly brainwashed orcs, they create quite the force. Their numbers are enough to take most of the heat off of Talion and Lithariel. However, a few of the attacking Uruks are able to get through and their sights are set on her. Because of that, I have to put her down and get my hands dirty. If I'm not careful, Lithariel will take damage, and if she dies, then it's game over. Since my orcs were perishing in the battle too, I did my best to brand as many stragglers as possible. The idea being where one Uruk dies, another takes its place. Fortunately, there weren't any captains or named foes nearby. There were only foot soldiers, and they were simple enough to handle. While carrying Lithariel, Talion and her engage in some conversation. She tells him that the tower had captured and killed all of her men. She was left alive for interrogation, as we saw in the earlier cutscene. However, she says that she didn't break, and that she kept Talion's identity and whereabouts a secret. Lithariel vows to take revenge on the tower, but Talion tells her that for now, she should focus on rallying her troops and staying alive. As they get closer to the exit, both Talion and Lithariel tell each other that they've proven their faith to one another.
Here, rest here.
Why are you doing this?
To stop the bleeding.
No. Why did you come back to save me?
I had a family once. a wife, and a son. And I buried them along with everyone I ever knew.
Stay with us. My mother can help you.
I can't. I don't belong here.
You will be a champion to my people.
Over there!
And you walk on your own.
Is that your answer?
Milady!
Help her.
Let me help. You need to leave this place immediately. It's not safe.
Thank you, Ranger.
Well, Talion was faced with an interesting decision. Continue with his mission, or bunker down with the tribesmen and explore a possible future with Lithariel. In the end, he chose his purpose over starting anew. He set his feelings of compassion and empathy aside, and instead sent honor and determination to the front. While that's not the very last we see of the tribesmen, for now there are bigger fish to fry. It's officially time to face down Nurn's Warchiefs. One of their showdown missions just so happened to be right by the ending spot of Lithariel's quest. So, with zero preparation and no bodyguards killed, I decided to go straight for Darg the Bloody. He lorded over the same stronghold that Lithariel was being held in. In my opinion, this was a pretty difficult area to infiltrate. Unlike previous strongholds, I didn't feel as though there were decent vantage points in this one. Nothing seemed very high up. Really, there was only one tower at the center of the stronghold, and that barely got off the ground. That meant that my usual tactic of climbing to safety would not hold up very well. Plus, a lot of the stronghold was made up of boardwalks and platforms. That meant that they only had to keep their eyes in two directions, making it harder for me to remain undetected. I'd say out of all the Warchiefs, Darg's mission took me the longest to complete. It wasn't even necessarily due to the assassination portion. If anything, the draw out process was the real kicker. I had to kill 5 of Darg's supporters with combat or ground executions. That meant targeting select Uruks and causing a ruckus in the middle of the stronghold. Most of the time, I'd get close to the supporters and would be about one move away from an execution. However, it always resulted in alarms and anger from the surrounding orcs. Plus, like I said earlier, escaping was not as easy as climbing a nearby tower. Eventually, I did come up with a sort of decent game plan. By branding these somewhat isolated Uruks, I could quickly get a hold of them and throw them to the ground. That would fast track the combat portion, and from there, I could get a ground execution in. Honestly, there were probably a bunch of different ways to go about this mission, and I didn't do myself any favors by being unprepared. Slowly, the number of kills ticked upwards, and after a whopping 23 minutes, I managed to secure all 5. With that, Darg the Bloody arrived on scene, and he brought not 1, not 2, but 3 bodyguards. Truly, I had no clue what I was going to do here. I couldn't take on 3 captains, 1 warchief, and a small army of orcs. Branding would only get me so far, and like I said, I struggled with it at this stronghold. For a while, I just watched Darg and observed his habits. I learned the hard way that he was invulnerable to ranged attacks as well as stealth takedowns. However, the Warchief would often run on ahead and leave his bodyguards behind. He'd hop up or down a platform and isolate himself for a couple of seconds. Utilizing these moments, I'd be able to get some licks in on Darg. Wraith stuns, combos, just about anything that moved his health bar down. The kicker on this though is that when they came, I'd have to take every single opportunity. The Warchief's health would slowly increase over time, and in order to not be here for another half an hour, I'd have to minimize time in between each attack. Eventually, I caught a lucky break and managed to get Darg and his followers on a small platform. This made it easier to focus the Warchief, and before long, he was down for the count. Normally, the Warchief gets on one knee, says their last words, and then it's off to the QuickTime event. However, with the option to now brand them, I can instead choose to dominate Darg, and that puts him on my side of the war. Just like that, that's 2 Warchiefs in my corner, and now I'm free to move on to the next 3. From here, I had my pick between Gham the Humiliator or Fulgum of the Welts. Honestly, I liked the way Fulgum's showdown mission sounded. Descend on his supporters to draw out the Warchief. I didn't think this meant anything other than stealth killing the Uruks from above, one of my favorite forms of takedowns. Plus, I figured at this point, I deserved to have an easier time drawing out the Warchief. So, entering the outpost of Ethirporos, I managed to get my 3 kills off no problem. I simply camped at a bridge, held on to the ledge, waited for Uruks to arrive, and repeatedly dropped down on their heads. In no time, Fulgrim arrived on site and things could not have gone any better. Except when it came time to kill Fulgrim. Remember everyone, don't be like me. Read the Warchief's strengths and weaknesses. I assumed that since his mission was all about stealth takedowns, Fulgrim would be vulnerable to an attack from above. Well, it turns out that he was not only vulnerable to it, it would end up being his Achilles heel. Fulgrim of the Welts died on the spot. There was no banter, no fight, no option to brand and dominate him. He just died. This effectively failed the mission, and a new Uruk by the name of Gollum Sawbones took his place. So I ended up learning the hard way that you have to be really careful about how you approach the Warchiefs. Sometimes their weaknesses end up working against you. So, taking it in stride, I quickly moved along to Fulgrim's replacement, Gollum. His showdown mission was pretty simple, perhaps just as easy as Fulgrim's. I just had to traverse the new stronghold and break 4 Caragors out of their cages. This could obviously be done from afar, and what's more, the beasts would take out a few Uruks in the process. Once 3 and 4 were released, Gollum Sawbones and his 3 bodyguards arrived on scene. Normally, I'd be scheming and biding my time. However, now seemed like the perfect time to strike. There were 2 Caragors loose in his vicinity, all of the nearby orcs were dead, and what's more, I had a man on the inside. During Darg's mission, I had branded and dominated a captain. The very same Uruk ended up becoming one of Gollum's new bodyguards. So, at worst, I'd take on Gollum and a captain while my thrall distracted the other. The wild card, of course, would be the Caragors. Would they fight for me, or would they just get in the way? Well, they'd end up dying as soon as I entered the battle, so it didn't make much of a difference in the end. However, the fight definitely went in my favor. My thrall was able to defeat both of the other bodyguards, Feldish Caragor Fang and Maku Mapkeeper. Before long, Gollum was down for the count, and just like Darg, I took control of his mind. This allowed me to identify the 5th and final Warchief, Ishmael's Nightbringer. As for the decision on which Warchief to take on next, I'd say the game made that choice for me. Gham the Humiliator's starting point was in the exact same spot as Gollum's, just outside of the stronghold. Gham's showdown mission was also a breeze. If you remember Mog, the first Warchief that I ever slew, his draw process was the same as Gham's. Kill some berserkers. This could be done in any manner. Elf shot, stealth, face-to-face combat, take your pick. Once all 5 marks were down, Gham arrived on scene. Of course, he had his entourage with him. 3 bodyguards seemed to be the norm at this point. 100%, I could always seek out each captain individually and make this process a lot easier. But at the same time, I kind of like the problem-solving factor that came with this style of gameplay. It adds a little extra spice and unpredictability to the matchup. Now, have you ever heard of the acronym KISS? It stands for Keep It Simple Stupid. Gham's long list of strengths and weaknesses did not include anything about ranged. That meant that he was vulnerable to elf shot, shadow strikes, and dagger throws. During my first interaction with him, I got his health down to a sliver. This was perfect. Just one more combo and he was done for. However, it was here that Gham decided to retreat. The smart and simple thing to do here would have been to let him flee. This way, he isolates himself from his captains, and with 2 arrows left in the bank, I could have shadow struck over and finished him off. Instead, I decided to grab him and keep him in the fight. This put me at the mercy of his diverse captains. They each had different movesets and mechanics. While I struggled to close the deal on Gham, one of his bodyguards ended up delivering the killing blow. Skog the Foul, a hunter captain, lodged a spear in Talion's chest and gave me my first death. So here's what happens after that. All of the captains and warchiefs involved in my killing get their power levels raised. This means that they'll now be tougher enemies to kill. They gain more strengths, their attacks deal more damage, etc. Next, the power struggles of Nurn get resolved. Captains challenge one another and the survivors get their power levels increased. Following that, any vacant warchief or captain role gets filled. The lesser captains move up on the Nemesis chart and new Uruks get promoted to captains and bodyguards. While dying doesn't really have an effect on Talion, it does make a difference to the rest of the world. Time progresses, enemies get stronger, and my job becomes more difficult. When I first played the game, I distinctly remember dying to one of the captains over and over again. That Uruk's power level went through the roof, and it got to the point where he probably could have given Sauron a run for his money. That's my way of saying, in Shadow of Mordor, dishonor before death. If the battle's a little too close, I think it's better to just get out of dodge and reset. Don't let the Uruks get the jump on Talion, or else you'll have multiple Dark Lords to take care of. After my resurrection, the waypoints of Nurn shifted around a bit. Gham and Ishmaz's starting points were now in different strongholds. A little humiliated after my fight with Gham, I decided to try my luck with the Nightbringer. Plus, his showdown mission was pretty close to my current Forge Tower. In terms of drawing out Ishmaz, again, nothing too bad. I just had to kill 5 of his supporters without raising the alarm. So, Elf Shot, Shadow Strike, Backstabs, Drop-ins, anything that did not raise suspicion was fair game. Before long, the Warchief arrived on site. This time, I did my due diligence and looked at his report. Ishmaz was vulnerable to stealth takedowns, meaning a simple drop-in would kill him instantly. So, I figured my best chance at success was to just face him head on. A good old-fashioned duel. I was lucky in that Ishmaz had similar tendencies to Dark. He'd leave his bodyguards behind and venture off to secluded parts of the stronghold. Taking advantage of those moments, I tore him a new one and downed him over and over again, until finally, the Nightbringer had surrendered. Dominating and branding him, that made for 4 of the 5 Warchiefs crossed off the list. Now, all I needed to do was reface Gham. With him on my side, that would open up the battlefield to the tower in the hand. Fortunately, Gham's showdown mission began right outside of the same stronghold. In fact, this objective was a new one, and arguably the easiest of the bunch. I just had to stay hidden and reach a waypoint at the center of the stronghold. That was it. A little bit of running here, a little bit of climbing there, and finally, a well-placed Shadow Strike would end up doing the trick. As soon as I hit the tower, Gham and his bodyguards arrived on scene. This time, I wasn't taking any chances, at least for the beginning of the fight. I laid into the Warchief via Elf Shot. This managed to do a number on his health. From there, I continued to wear him down, and thinking the moment was right, with a sliver of health left, I Shadow Struck for a finisher. Unfortunately, this would not be the killing blow. He still had just enough health left to call for a tactical retreat. Gham booked it for the fields of Nurn, and I followed suit. Honestly, this would end up being an incredibly long chase sequence. I only had 1 arrow left, meaning that a Shadow Strike teleportation move was not an option. As far as I could tell, there weren't any restock points for Elf Shot, and there weren't any Caragors to mount and ride. My best bet was to perform some minor parkour, activate the Wraith Dash, and cross my fingers that I'd get close enough. To my delight, this would end up working, and what's more, I had one more trick up my sleeve. Because Gollum was vulnerable to ranged attacks, I could lob some daggers in his direction and stagger his movements. This was more than enough to catch up to him, and through that, I could deplete the rest of his health. Soon, I had branded and dominated Gham. All 5 Warchiefs and their armies were under my control. That was enough to end this segment of the main story and to bring on the next quest. The starting point for this mission would end up leading me to the shorelines of Nurn. After all, Queen Marwen did say that the Hand and the Tower were across the Sea of Nurnen. The in-game description for this one was plain and simple. Talion's forces await his command. It's finally time to launch an assault on the Black Hand.
We wish to thank you for coming to our aid, Captain.
Aye. Never realized my smuggling could be so appreciated by the Queen. Lady.
They're here.
Orcs. They make bad passengers. But I've carried worse. Lady. Keep that plank level. Oi, touch nothing.
Queen Marwen. It's good to see you in better health.
The boats are ready. The skippers have been briefed on your destination.
Good.
How long will those orcs obey you?
Well, I should think as long as I like. I'm in your debt.
We owe you our lives, Talion.
Just put an end to this madness.
My lady.
Shrok! Shrok has bled us bad, bled us hard. Shrok has butchered us, stole our minds, stole our will, taking Mordor! No more! No more! Drown the air with Uruk cries, and the earth with Uruk blood!
As shown in the meeting between Talion and Lithariel, there's clearly still unresolved tension there. Things that both of them need to get off their chest. Either way, I suppose it doesn't really matter now, does it? Also, Queen Marwen is certainly looking a lot healthier. I know there were some concerns before with regards to her medicine, but it appears that time heals all wounds. As for the task at hand, it's certainly a different and unique mission. One of the Uruk captains from Nurn, Olgoth Baghead, is this fortress's first line of defense. Him and a small army of orcs stand between Talion and the Black Captains. As for Talion, he only has the support of his Warchiefs here. While numbers matter, combat experience and strengths are arguably more important. I'd take 5 good Warchiefs over dozens of soldiers. Each Warchief took on their fair share of Uruks. The enemy split into groups and surrounded each of my allies. As for me, I had my own small battalion to deal with. Included in that roster was Olgoth Baghead. At first, it was kind of difficult to isolate him. The other Uruks kept disrupting my combos, and due to the nature of this quest, I erred on the side of caution for a majority of the battle. I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I didn't see any icons to replenish my health or elf shot. However, as the fight raged on, the Uruks would slowly get picked off by my Warchiefs. Before long, Olgoth had barely any supporters left, and I was free to wreak havoc. For the captain, there was no option of branding or dominating him. It was only death. After his execution, the Warchiefs picked off the surviving orcs, and my objective had updated. The icon now depicted the Eye of Sauron, a sign that I was going to face off against a Black Captain. As Talion and Celebrimbor enter the fortress, the two of them practically say the classic line. It's quiet. Too quiet. There were no captains, orcs, Uruks, ghouls, Caragors, humans, or any signs of life for that matter. The keep looked deserted and as though it had long since been abandoned.
I wasn't expecting you. I hope my soldiers gave you a welcome.
Where are you? Show yourself! This is the work of the tower.
The Black Hand went looking for you. But it will give me great pleasure to take you myself. Bow to me. And I will deliver you to the Dark Lord, unspoiled.
We bow to no one.
The Dark Lord forgives you, Celebrimbor. Return to him and cast off this human corpse.
Stand up and fight.
There's no need, Ranger. Celebrimbor is your curse. He chose you.
Silence!
And he can release you at any time. Yes, that's all you are, Ranger. A vessel for the Ringmaker. As you wish.
Well, that's certainly a bit of a bombshell. This whole time, Celebrimbor's been telling Talion that he's cursed and that the two of them were bound together by fate. Due to the blood sacrifice, they've both been banished from death. However, that's revealed to have been a lie. Celebrimbor chose Talion. The Wraith latched onto the Ranger and has been essentially riding him ever since. According to the Tower, at any point, the Elf Lord could easily jump out of Talion's body and grant him his desired death. However, that doesn't lessen Talion's desire for revenge and justice. In any case, we'll see what becomes of that revelation after. But first, it's time to face the Tower. Honestly, this boss fight was kind of strange. It was a far cry off from what I had to deal with while facing the Hammer. There wasn't actually a fight, not in the traditional sense. It was more like a timed challenge. I had 8 minutes to continuously stealth drain the tower. Clones of the Black Captain would wander around the fortress grounds. They'd have their set patrol paths, and from there, it would be up to me to drain them. I could creep up from behind, I could jump down from below, I could climb up from a ledge. It really wasn't that difficult. At no point did the tower raise a weapon against me. There never came a time where I got to let off a combo or had to block/evade his attacks. It was all relatively linear and easy enough. During this phase, the tower would communicate to Talion and get in his head. He'd bring up Dirhael and Yorith. He'd try to tear Talion down, and he'd also ask him questions like, why do you still fight, and don't you wish to join them? It was here too that I'd hear Yorith's voice and the sounds of her humming. It was the same tune that she used to sing at the Black Gate. Occasionally, she too would say things like, why did you let us die, and we're dead because of you. Clearly, this was a tactic to get Talion worked up, but luckily, he was able to keep his nerve and remain focused on the tower.
You will never see your family again.
You said we were cursed. You deceived me.
It was Sauron's doing. This was your doing!
I should have died with my family.
I thought you wanted revenge. I can leave you. But there is only one way to close the circle. The Black Hand remains.
Not for long.
Nurn is in flames. We must return to Queen Marwen.
The Black Hand has been here. I can feel it.
Lithariel.
I'd say that for now, Talion took the news relatively well. Obviously, he's angry with Celebrimbor for the deception, but he and the Elf Lords share the same mindset. The servants of Sauron must be dealt with, not just for the deaths of Talion's family, but for the pain and suffering they've brought to all of Middle-earth. As it stands, 2 of the 3 Black Captains are dead, the Hammer and the Tower. Now all that remains is the Hand, although I deem him as the most mysterious. Plus, if there was to be a leader amongst the 3 of them, I'd assume it to be him. That night at Blackgate, it seemed as though the Hammer and the Tower were following his lead. In any case, it looks like the Black Hand is exacting his revenge on the outcasts, just as Talion said he would. Much of Mordor is in flames, and any enemy of Sauron's will have surely felt his fury. Figuring this to be the no going back portion of the story, I pumped as many ability points into my upgrades as possible, spent my remaining Mirian, and opened up new rune slots on my weapons. The final showdown was here, and who knows what Talion will have to go through before it's all over.
I am not worth your vengeance, Father. Why do you fight?
We will be together soon. Forever.
Soon, Celebrimo. Soon.
Nasty beasts. We want this. But we took it from them.
Ag buzun ishi krim patul.
It was mine to keep.
Where did they hide it? Where?
Be gone.
The precious is ours. Ours!
Sauron knows we're here.
Let's not keep him waiting.
Unpacking the cutscene, Gollum ended up making one final appearance. Through his help, we got to see that Celebrimbor did not in fact fall prey to Sauron's influence, although he did give into the ring's temptation. For an undisclosed amount of time, he was a ring bearer for the One Ring. We'll find out soon enough where that could have led to. Towards the end of the scene, we saw that Mount Doom, the birthplace of the One Ring, had erupted. This was preceded by Celebrimbor and Talion acknowledging that Sauron knows they're coming. There's no longer an element of surprise when it comes to the showdown with the Hand. Not that there ever really was one anyways. As for current events, it's currently Talion's forces against Sauron's. My Uruks did a good job at clearing a path to the Black Gate, but there's still one final battalion we need to get through. Every hand has 5 fingernails. In this case, the Black Captain has 5 Talons, aka 5 servants of his own. They command the last defense of the Black Gate. Each Talon has their own unique build, comprising of the various classes I've encountered on my journey. Hunters, archers, berserkers, defenders, assassins, the like. So, it's my Warchiefs and a handful of foot soldiers against their captains and Uruks. With each of their deaths, I can hear a disembodied voice, likely Sauron's, saying something in black speech. It's probably meant to be a taunt or threat aimed at Talion and Celebrimbor. During this matchup, a couple of my Warchiefs ended up perishing in battle. Grublik and Gollum were the first to go. While I salute their sacrifice, they were still orcs. Nothing more than pawns who played their role in this big game of chess. Before long, the 5th Talon of the Hand was defeated. This left an open lane up to the Black Gate, and what's more, there were piles of runes on the ground. Every Talon dropped a rune, and all of my fallen Warchiefs left a little something behind as well. These were decent runes too, things that would come in handy for the late game. As I began my ascension, Celebrimbor told Talion what would happen next. With the hand defeated, Sauron can no longer take form. He'd be nothing more than a shadow over Mordor. While still a threat, he'd certainly be less dangerous than while connected to the final Black Captain. It's imperative that Talion succeeds here, as the fate of Middle-earth depends on it.
I have a gift for you, Celebrimbor. The Dark Lord gave you a second chance to stand by his side. Now I give you no choice. We shall be sealed together in death.
So be it.
Return to me.
From here, Sauron manifests himself through the Black Hand. He's attached himself to Celebrimbor, and with his power, Sauron can once again dominate Middle-earth. Talion, bleeding and dying, puts up a last stand against the Dark Lord. It isn't much of a fight. It's a series of quick-time events. The Ranger dodges and rolls away from Sauron's swings. As he winds up for the finishing blow, Celebrimbor is able to freeze the Dark Lord, allowing for Talion to retaliate and finish what he had started.
Talion, my heart, we will be together soon. Forever.
The Black Hand of Sauron is dead. The Hither Shore is calling us.
This is no longer our battle. I tried fighting him. It can't be done. Could you really rest for all of eternity, knowing that you had the chance to stop him, but did nothing? has come for a new ring.
And with that, the end credits start to roll. Thus completes the main story for Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor. All 3 Black Captains are dead. The outcasts have fled Mordor. Torvin is on his way back to the Blue Mountain. It isn't really stated what's become of Marwyn and Lithariel. We don't get much of a wrap-up for their storyline, but I suppose we can assume they're still alive and relatively safe. Talion's family has been avenged, Celebrimbor can finally rest, and for now, the armies of Mordor are scattered. Only, it seems like Talion and Celebrimbor's work is not yet finished. Looking on at the big boss, Talion decides to fully finish what he had started. He's no longer content with the hand, tower, and hammer. He wants Sauron as well. Of course, Celebrimbor won't put up a fight, because that was his main goal all along, to take revenge on the Dark Lord. If you didn't know, there is a direct sequel to this game called Middle-earth: A Shadow of War. It came out in 2017 and more or less picks off where this plot ended. Soon enough, I'll be visiting that title too. Now, before signing off, there are a couple of things I just wanted to go back on and discuss. As revealed through the cutscene with the hand, Celebrimbor attempted to use the ring to defeat Sauron. While noble and admirable, it of course did not work. And so, that's how Celebrimbor was captured and slain. From there, the servants of Sauron performed the blood sacrifice on Talion and his family. This summoned Celebrimbor from the dead. Sauron had hoped that the Elf Lord would have attached himself to the hand, as that would have brought him up to full power from the get-go. However, Celebrimbor instead chose Talion as his vessel, and the rest is history. As for the fight with the Black Hand, I wasn't all too impressed. It was even more dumbed down than the fight with the tower, and I didn't think that could be possible. I understand maybe wanting to switch things up for each boss fight, but I think there are things that Monolith could have improved upon. For the tower, they could have kept the whole stealth drain section in, and then, at the end, maybe just do a simple one-on-one duel. Since his shtick is deception and psychic abilities, maybe spawn in a couple of clones and have the player find the right one. Then, for the hand, the final boss of the game, I think we deserved more than what we got. A simple and fast quick-time event. Maybe it could have been where the player inflicts enough damage to the hand, Celebrimbor freezes him, the player goes in for a quick-time sequence, and the process repeats. The last 2 boss fights just felt a little too rushed and a little too easy. They stand out even more since the fight with the hammer was fleshed out and had difficulty and depth to it. To me, it was just a bit of a strange design choice. In any case, here are the Sparks notes on my thoughts towards the game. Overall, I really enjoyed it. The gameplay itself was incredibly fun and addicting. The combat is satisfying, ever-changing, and diverse. The Nemesis system is of course the award winner for Shadow of Mordor. It's what keeps the game fresh, alive, and relevant for many fans. I liked how I got to visit 2 regions of Mordor, Udun and Nurn. I wasn't expecting a field trip over to the south of Mordor, and again, it helped to keep the gameplay fresh. I'd say my favorite questlines were Hirgon's and Ratbag's. I liked hearing about Talion's past, enjoyed the ranger camaraderie, and it really felt like I was embarking on these undercover, behind enemy line type of missions. As for Ratbag, I found his story to be told from an incredibly unique viewpoint. In practically every single story of Tolkien's universe, orcs are portrayed as being purely evil. I don't recall there ever being a time where they work with men or any of the other races. This was, at the very least, my first time encountering a quote, friendly orc. He worked alongside Talion, and together, they both got what they had wanted. While there's a great chance he would have betrayed Talion, the story never got to that part, so for now, I'd say innocent until proven guilty. Honestly, I didn't feel strongly about Gollum or Lithariel's questline. It was neat to see Celebrimbor's past, and it helped to paint the bigger picture, but really, it only felt like I had learned useful information during the Nurn portion of the game. As for Lithariel and Queen Marwyn, I was semi-interested in the connection between Talion and the Queen's daughter, but it ended up falling flat. He rejected her, they had a tense, awkward encounter, and that was it. We never heard from her or the Queen again. While branding Uruks and creating an army of orcs was by far the coolest feature of the game, the backstory to Marwyn and her possession just didn't interest me all that much. Then lastly, and I hate to say it, my least favorite quest line was Torvin's. Don't get me wrong, I love the dwarves. They're my favorite race within the Lord of the Rings universe. However, I just had zero interest in his missions. I think they came at a really strange time in the game. It took over half of the main story to be completed in order to get Caragor riding lessons. The same thing went for Graug lessons. To me, the former is something you introduce at the start of the game. And trust me, while it's neat to mount and ride Graugs, I can probably count on one hand the number of times I actually saw those beasts. They're not rare by any means and can certainly add an interesting layer of gameplay to Shadow of Mordor. However, I'm personally of the mindset that these mechanics were presented to the player a little too late in the game. I suppose to give them credit though, they did come right before the second wave of Warchief hunts and could be used for those missions, so credit where credit is due. Overall though, Torvin's missions just didn't feel compelling to me. He didn't have much of a character arc, his quests didn't add all that much to the main story, and frankly, I didn't find them to be that fun. Either way, it only made up 3 of the many quests in the game, and they didn't leave a sour taste in my mouth or anything of the sorts. I still really enjoyed the story that was told, and I'm excited to get into Shadow of War. Thank you all for coming along this journey with me. I'd love to know your thoughts on the story down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.